Welcome to the Concerned Parents of Young Athletes podcast, where we dismantle the confusion and provide the facts on structural management, a system designed to prevent injuries, understand the unique structures of every young athlete, and provide effective treatments, all based on structure, science, and common sense. Episode 6, It All Begins with the Feet. Hi, I'm Dr. Tim Maggs, and welcome to our podcast. As you can see here, we have actuarialics. We've talked about actuarialics. There's a cost attached to that structure. There's a cost attached to each young athlete's structure, and we want to mitigate that cost. Well, if we look at any architectural structure, if we're going to try to balance that structure, we want to go to the foundation. And the first foundation that we're talking about is that of the feet. The feet are the only part of the body that make contact with the earth. They are under constant demand, and there is a biomechanically correct position of the foot, and there are biomechanically incorrect position of the feet. So there's two key issues when we talk about how do we optimize the feet. One is that there is symmetry. So if you have total collapse of the feet and they are symmetrical, it seems like that would make sense, but it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because if the feet are not in the correct biomechanical position, supported correctly, the stresses are magnified all the way up that structure. So yes, we want symmetry of the feet, but we want support under the arches of the feet. Now, the support can vary. There are all different types of orthotics out there, and all of these orthotics claim to be the best. Well, the one fact is they create symmetry. So that's why we talk about over-the-counter versus custom. Custom may not be symmetrical, and custom are trying to fix the entire structure with an expensive orthotic, and that's not needed. So the first thing we want to do is we want to understand what is the likelihood that my child has collapse of the feet. Well, we've answered that question. In 2023, we published our 5th study. And what we concluded in that study were two things. This is the study that really told us you don't need custom orthotics. The feet need to be symmetrical. Over-the-counter orthotics will do that. You can't say that the orthotic A has the correct supports and orthotic B from this company aren't correct. There's debate out there. I've learned that support, it varies, but the one element that remains the same is that you need symmetry of the feet and you need to provide some degree of support. So there are more expensive over-the-counter orthotics, there are less expensive over-the-counter orthotics. I would lean towards the more expensive because you would assume that's a higher quality. Now, the second fact that we learned on this study, we examined the feet of 1,001 patients over a 3-year period. To the far left is the optimal foot, and you can look down and see there were 0. We had nobody who had optimal feet. The next was the mild collapse of the arches of the feet. That too was 0. Now keep in mind, we studied the feet of patients ranging in age from 8 to 81. So it was a broad brush evaluation of who we looked at. The center foot is a moderate collapse of the arches, and that was 97%. So that was about 10% of the population. The severe collapse, 508, so that was about 50% of the population have severe collapse of the feet. Total collapse was about 40% or 401 patients. The second fact that we learned was that with each decade, the foot continued to collapse. So therefore, 100% of these 1,001 patients had moderate to total collapse, and their feet continue collapsing in time. Now we're talking about young athletes that we want to do everything we can to mitigate the risk of injury. Absolutely start with orthotics. Okay, it's a no-brainer. So you can get that on my website, the fifth study, 1,001 patients, but start with orthotics. Okay, that's number one. And then we can go from there. Now here, what does it do? These pictures tell it better than I can explain it. On the left, that's what this patient looked like when he came in. On the right, the combination of our Dr. Mag's leg length test and structural fingerprint exam, this is how he ended up. If you look at the shorts, the balance, if you look at the left knee, how rotated inward it is, and look at the alignment. If you look at the left quadricep muscle in the before picture, it's disengaged. If you look at it in the after picture, it's very engaged. And what that shows us is that the feet play a huge role neurologically in our body. And if they are collapsed, the nervous system is turned down as far as the proprioception, as far as balance, strength, speed, all of those factors that are controlled by the nervous system. So at a young age, you want to start with orthotics, but the key is get the x-ray. The x-ray is going to be the key. So you can get orthotics, but if you don't have the x-ray, once the orthotics get put in the shoes, you will find that that is a far inferior approach, and it's a risky approach because what we've learned is that 22% of the time when you put orthotics in shoes, femoral head height gets worse, gets more imbalanced. So you may have fixed the feet, but you've created a bigger problem. And that's why we need to know what that post x-ray looks like once you get orthotics in the shoes. So we have the Dr. Mag's leg length test, we have the structural fingerprint exam, and parents often ask, what about how much the kid grows and how often do you have to get orthotics? And again, I believe that I have fitted more youth athletes with orthotics than anyone else in history. And my conclusion is they wear out before they outgrow them, because routinely you should get new orthotics every year to year and a half to 2 years, and that should be before the young athlete outgrows them. Yes, there will be growth spurts, but for the most part, they'll wear them out before they outgrow them. So thank you so much for joining me. Be well. If you know of any families with youth athletes in those families, please let them know about our podcast, and we'll see you next time.